Welcome, everyone, once again to our Johnnie Torch Live broadcast number 65 today. We're going to live today. So if you're joining us, I've got the chat room open just in case any of my two viewers are interested in posing a question to yours truly. And we're going to do a Torch News Roundup this week. Roundup number 84. My. How time flies. 84 roundups already. Not a lot to talk about this week. This is kind of the way it is, I think, around this point in the year when the big summer blockbusters are pretty much ready to go in the can. And there isn't much to talk about that's not spoiler related, and we don't talk spoilers here. We try to keep it as, more the upcoming stuff that is in play later in the year, not really the big blockbusters. So we got a couple of things to talk about. That should be interesting. Let me know what you think in the chat room or in the comments below if you're watching this after the fact. A little fashionably late as usual here. Broadcasting live from stately Torch Tower, looking high above the metropolis below. And yeah, this is a Holy Week edition of Johnnie Torch Live. I want to wish everybody a happy Easter. That's coming up. This is probably the last broadcast before Easter because we are not doing one this Saturday. The only way to spend your Saturday is being postponed until after the Easter holiday, which is difficult because we do This Week in Comic Book Television, which means we're going to be doing This Week in Comic Book Television the week after This Week in Comic Book Television. But I digress. Let us focus on the here and the now and the news of. So let's go to our first story here. And what is our first story going to be? Our first story is probably the one that is broken yesterday, making all kinds of rumblings about the return of Phil Coulson to the big screen. After all this time, Agent Coulson is now returning to the big screen in Captain Marvel. So this news is very exciting because I think we all pretty much are fans of, Clark Gregg and the job he's done on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as Agent Coulson. And we always want to see him come back and intermingle once again with the Avengers. The interesting thing is for some reason the movie side of things no longer wants to play ball with Agent Coulson. They just want to keep the movies and the TV things separate, apparently. But in this case, an exception was made because Captain Marvel is set in the 90s. Yeah, so it's kind of a cop-out to say that he's going to be back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe when he's honestly only going to be a flashback version. I still like this idea. Of course, we also have Ronan the Accuser back. Now, this is a character that I always liked this character from Guardians of the Galaxy. And some don't particularly think he was very well realized in Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought he was realized about as well as could be expected. But this will give them a chance to actually get deeper into the character and maybe flesh out a little more of his motivations. Basically, he's just a genocidal madman. So, good luck trying to, bring anything more to the character than that. And also the character Korath the Pursuer, played by Digimon Honso, and I'm probably butchering that name, but you remember him as the guy that famously said, "Who?" to Star-Lord. He will be in it too as, Ronan's right-hand man. Ronan, of course, will be played by Lee Pace once again, returning to the role that made him famous. I guess. I don't know. Is he famous? Now, there's also some photos coming out, on-set photos. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any of them because they were all embedded in Twitter accounts, and I don't know how to get them out of the Twitter page post and up on screen. So we had a few images of Brie Larson wearing allegedly 90s style fashion, which was jeans and a black leather jacket, which she looked good in. We have a couple more scenes of her in the green Captain Marvel outfit, and a scene of her or a shot of her in one of the Air Force airplanes again. We've seen things like that when she was, you know, sort of rehearsing for the part with the actual U.S. Air Force. But yeah, this is very exciting news for those of us who enjoyed, Ronan's presence in Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course, seeing Phil Coulson once again on the big screen. What do you think of that? Is he going to sort of be a precursor to perhaps joining the Infinity War sequel, Avengers 4? Because if what's going to happen is what a lot of people think is going to happen, that a lot of the heroes are going to be brought back to life after being killed and stuff, because I think apparently that's what happened in the comic. There shouldn't be any further, qualms about, bringing Coulson back to the MCU when you consider that all these other characters can be brought back. Why can't Coulson? Of course, he's got his hands full on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. every week. Make sure you check out Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. every week, Friday nights. And you won't regret it because it's been a great season. And we don't really have a lot of information as well on that. I was trying to check out that this is around the time of the year when we find out what shows have been canceled and what shows are coming back. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. traditionally is on the bubble every year, so it being revealed to be on the bubble is, of course, not really news. So far, from what I hear, it's been a 50-50 proposition. The Marvel overlords, so to speak, that are in charge of ABC would like to see the show continue, and it's getting good reviews. The past 2 seasons have been great, and you don't really want to cancel a show when it's still got potential and it's still on top. Ratings have been fairly consistent. I mean, if you watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the past 5 seasons, you're probably still watching it. If you gave up on it a long time ago, then that was a long time ago and it really didn't affect the ratings. But suffice to say that we'll probably get the official word probably in May. The final judgment usually is in May. The showrunners have, I heard, also constructed a series finale for the season finale, so to speak, in case the show doesn't get renewed. It's supposed to be designed to give the series closure if it doesn't return. Of course, I think the way they're leaving it is not to burn any bridges in case the show does come back, because, again, Marvel wants it to come back. Disney apparently can pull some strings at ABC, even though the ABC muckety mucks wanted to cancel it last year after the last season. But, Marvel with their Disney connections got the purse strings pulled a little bit, so in their favor. So that was a good thing. But again, let me know what you think in the comments about Phil Coulson once again on the big screen for the first time since the end of Phase 1. He missed a full phase and a half, really. But I'm happy to see it, even though it's going to be a flashback. Of course, we're also going to get Nick Fury, the flashback version of him. I don't know if this is going to have any, age effect, makeup, CGI, I should say, on them. I don't think they really need it. If anything, maybe they probably could play with Coulson's hair a little bit. It was a little bit lighter, I think, back then, wasn't it? And then it got darker as he got on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., something like that. I don't know. That was the only thing I noticed. Samuel L. Jackson looks the same no matter what. I mean, the guy ages like amazing. He's looked the same for the last 20 years. I don't know. So yeah, let me know what you think about Agent Coulson joining. And this is interesting too. I mean, if you really want to think about it, they're trying to position Captain Marvel as being sort of like the first superhero. And I don't have a problem with that. It's just that it finds a strange place in the MCU when you consider that she's been missing for like 15 years. And, there's a lot of secret superheroes, I think, in the MCU prior to Iron Man. Captain Marvel apparently did her thing and then disappeared. We had the Ant-Man and the Wasp, the original Ant-Man and the Wasp, Hank Pym and Janet, that were sort of like secret spy superheroes. And it could very well be that when Nick Fury said, "You think you're the only superhero in the world?" There was actually quite a few before that. I mean, I always took it that he meant that Captain America was already thawed out at that point, even though he wasn't, fully acclimated again to the present day. But yeah, let me know what you think about Agent Coulson and Ronan the Accuser in Captain Marvel. Sounds exciting to me. I don't know about anybody else. All right, let's take a look now at the world of Star Trek. Oh yes. Um, we have Leonard Nimoy's 87th birthday just passed a couple days ago. Of course, he passed on, of course, um, a couple of years ago now. But I know there was a story about his son, Adam Nimoy, got married to Terry Farrell, who was in Deep Space Nine. That kind of came out of nowhere for me, but I don't keep up with Star Trek news too much, so I didn't really know that they were an item or anything. But of course, Terry, a long time heartthrob from back when I was a kid. Back in Deep Space Nine era, Terry, she was quite the thing. Of course, she still is, but I'm talking about nostalgia now. All right, let's get to the real story here. We've got Simon Pegg giving a few comments about the marketing of Star Trek Beyond and the current status of Star Trek 4, for lack of a better term, because it's not the original Star Trek 4, but Simon Pegg was quoted as saying, "I think Star Trek Beyond was poorly marketed, to be honest. If you look at a film like Suicide Squad that was around for such a long time before it finally came out and people were aware of it, whereas with Star Trek Beyond, it was left too late before they started their marketing push. It still did great business, but it was disappointing compared to Into Darkness." He also goes on to talk about the trailers being too uh, revealing. Because it used sabotage, which was our surprise moment in the end, it was supposed to be a very fun and heightened twist, something that was a big surprise, and they blew it in the first trailer, which really annoyed me. They also made the film look like a boneheaded action film. And they were scared, I think, of mentioning the 50th anniversary. It was fumbled as a thing. They didn't know what to do with it, and it's a real shame. But I came away from it really, really happy and very proud of it. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Star Trek Beyond was a great film. I gave it a really high review as well. I kind of still like Into Darkness a little bit more because it has that Wrath of Khan flavor where they're purposely trying very hard to evoke that no win scenario. That's kind of what I, took away from that film. I mean, I really didn't like I didn't necessarily hate it, but I wasn't crazy about the role reversal thing with Kirk dying and Spock being you know, the one that had to carry on and go after Khan. Khan was kind of, marginalized somewhat because he wasn't the real villain in the film. He wasn't the villain of the piece. So I mean, it wasn't a masterpiece by any means, but I think the criticism that Star Trek Beyond gets is mostly because it was kind of a Star Trek episode on the big screen. That's kind of what a lot of people think about Insurrection. It wasn't very ambitious, so to speak. It was, well, I think Star Trek Beyond was by leaps and bounds more ambitious than Insurrection. But, the idea is that they weren't going for some kind of galaxy shattering, scenario. It was basically just this week's adventure, which, like I said, that's fine. You can't really punish or, penalize a film or a concept for not being overly ambitious. A lot of times, people complain that it's like, well, we have to have the whole universe be at stake on every, adventure. We have to have the whole city at stake in every superhero movie or TV show. Something like that is refreshing to have once in a while a small stakes type plot, which of course stakes weren't that small in Star Trek Beyond. The villain. Oh, I'm forgetting his name now. I would like to see that film again. I haven't seen it in a couple of years now, probably. Idris Elba, of course, played him so well, but he was trying to destroy several outposts, I think, in the Federation space. So it wasn't really a entirely, small stakes game. Okay, now this is what you all were hoping to hear. The most recent that we've heard about this, Quentin Tarantino wanting to direct a Star Trek film. Apparently, he went to J.J. Abrams. He went to the Paramount brass and said he had an idea for a Star Trek film that he would like to direct. And they pretty much said, yeah, let's go for it. And let's put down some writers, get this thing, shaped up, and that he would probably direct it. It would probably be rated R. So this is what Simon Pegg had to say about it. He said, I don't think he's written an R-rated Star Trek script. I think what happened is he went to J.J. Abrams with an idea that he's had for a while. I remember he told us about it a long time ago. I think he told me and Edgar Wright about it a long time ago. He just put it to JJ, and JJ is considering putting it into a writing room. We got an email just saying, guess who came in the office the other day? So I don't know much about it, other than the fact that it is sort of in the mix. So we will see. So apparently still not a whole lot concrete known about this. Now, that's the thing that bothers me about Star Trek films. They're spread out way too far from this in this in this franchise, so to speak. I mean, when they did Star Trek in the 80s, it was basically every 2-3 years. That was kind of what you did back then. You did a sequel probably about 2 years, maybe three, depending on some of the big budget films. But with these films, it's like 5 years in between. And the thing about Star Trek that I think is one of its strengths is the ongoing narrative. You know what I mean? The even as movies, they felt like episodes. It was, and the adventure continues at the end of every movie. Well, most movies. Of course, they didn't have that in, I think, 4, 5, and 6, but the idea was that the story was going to continue to progress and you'd find out what was happening. And we don't have that with these films because they seem to be going on a idea that, well, maybe there won't be another one. Maybe that was the last one. Or maybe there'll be another one, but it'll have absolutely nothing to do with the last one you just saw. So I don't know. I wish they could tighten the screws a little bit. And I understand that some of the cast is probably busy because obviously Chris Pine is he's a big name now, and Zoe Saldana, of course, a big name. Apart from that, though, really, as long as you can get their schedules lined up, I don't really see Zachary Quinto, Simon Pegg, John Cho. I don't really see them being wildly in demand. I mean, I'm not saying that as a put down. I'm just saying it as an actuality that just get these guys together, make a movie, and don't overthink it. You know what I mean? We don't have to complicate the issue. We gotta just get some Star Trek fans in there, people that know these characters, understand how they would act, put them in a room and get some stories written. And I've had like a love-hate relationship with this franchise, with the the Abrams version, because of course they've got it a lot. They got it a lot different than they did in the original, the OG version, with Spock being much more emotional and romantic, and the love affair with the horror and stuff. That stuff just doesn't feel like classic Trek. They tried to bring it around a little bit more in Trek Beyond, but still not enough. Still not enough. Okay, so let me know what you think about basically anything that Simon Pegg has just said here. And more importantly, are you still excited about a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek film? Do you want it to be rated R? Do you want to see it be basically the way it's been for the past 50 years? Let me know in the comments below. And we will move on now to... This is the latest news that just came out as well. This is a fast-breaking story. Fox's The Dark Phoenix, the most recent X-Men film that is due out soon, is not going to be due out soon. Yes, Gene, I'm crying as well. But the film apparently is going to have some reshoots for the third act because they weren't satisfied with the third act, apparently. Simon Kinberg, it says, will, let's see, start shooting sometime in late summer, early fall with new script pages, which will reportedly cost around $10 million to complete. Let's see. This seemingly suggests that they'll be mostly filming new dialogue and some less demanding action scenes rather than anything CGI heavy or introducing a new character that was rumored. All right, so I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing because a lot of people were complaining or were at least concerned that there might be a lack of a big finish. They weren't going to go with Lalandra. They weren't going to go with uh, the Shar Empire. It seemed like they were trying to do once again, a very naturalistic version of the Dark Phoenix. Unfortunately, that's not what the Dark Phoenix really calls for because we've seen as much in the last attempt at this with The Last Stand. A film that I don't dislike, by the way, but it didn't really use the Dark Phoenix to its highest potential. Also, let's see, that means that the film will now be moved from its November 2nd, 2018 date to February 14th, 2019. So Valentine's Day, you're going to see Jean Grey take on Cyclops and the rest of the X-Men. How's that for a Valentine's Day treat? But of course, now this is the new thing, isn't it? Because, studios aren't afraid to push the superhero movie into February now because it's been successful every time it's been tried, honestly. I mean, Black Panther came out, of course, naturally shattered every single record in the book. Deadpool came out, shattered records. At the time when Daredevil came out, that originally, the first movie of, the only movie of Daredevil, when that came out, that shattered records as well. So February is not a bad time to release a superhero movie. We know that from experience. And a lot of leeway is given nowadays to these superhero franchises putting out their movies because we had, Batman v Superman in March. We still have a lot of films in November and December. They also moved the New Mutants film from, well, actually, they're moving it again. Originally, it was going to come out April 13th, 2018, which would be not too far away. Then it was moved to February 22nd, 2019. But now, because the Dark Phoenix is coming out basically a week before that, they have to rejigger the schedule to make sure they're not competing with themselves. And so New Mutants will be coming out August 2nd, 2019. I still am not really interested in New Mutants. Part of the reason why it was moved in the first place was they wanted to add some more horror elements because it's supposed to be like a horror movie. And they wanted to change the tone of the film to PG-13 because it was originally conceived as an R-rated film. And that's fine. A lot of people are saying, though, that Fox's merger with Disney now puts New Mutants in jeopardy because Disney's going to own it at that point, and who knows if they're going to want to use it. They might not even release it. It might just be like I suppose they'd have to release it, right, if they made the movie. I don't know. But some people suggested that maybe it's going to be a made-for-DVD movie or something like that. But yeah, it looks like we're not going to have another comic book film this year, which is disappointing to me, but we have a little something to look forward to early in 2019, which is always good. And we've got some stuff spread out pretty good among this year, right? Because we've got a lot of stuff. We've got, of course, we're about a month away from Infinity War. And of course, we have Han Solo, the solo film coming up. Also, the month after that, we've got Deadpool. We've got Ant-Man and the Wasp in the summer. Then we have, let's see, let me think. Venom comes out, I believe, in October. I'm not sure about that. It might be November. Is it? I think it's October. And then we have, of course, Aquaman in December. So, there's still plenty on the plate for the comic book fan out there in 2018. All right, so let me know what you think about Dark Phoenix. Are you looking forward to this movie? Are you excited about this movie? You think Fox is going to mess up the the genre any more than it already has? Um, I honestly think, though, that when you look at the X-Men franchise, they've had more successes than failures. It's easy to say, well, you know, but the first X-Men landmark film. It's really a great film. That first one. Again, you want to say how ambitious was it? It was the first in a burgeoning genre, and you can't really hold against it that it was more of a television type, feel, budget, scope. Then you had X2, which was amazing, and to this day is my favorite X-Men film. Blew everything around it away. Last Stand, again, not what you really wanted in the Dark Phoenix, but I thought the rest of the film was good in the context of Wolverine's character arc and so forth. I thought it was good. Then you have First Class, which of course was also very good. You have Days of Future Past, which is a classic, another one that's right up there with X2. Apocalypse, a little bit disappointing, much like The Last Stand. Not a perfect film. Still had enough in it that I thought was enjoyable. And you had the Wolverine films, which of course I don't really count those as X-Men films, but again, with various degrees of success. So, I mean, the Dark Phoenix could very well be, I don't want to say a surprise. I mean, I would like to think it's going to be a success, but it could very well be, an accomplishment, something that we've been waiting to see with the storyline of the Dark Phoenix. I certainly hope so. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. All right, so we got one more story here. Like I said, not a whole lot to talk about. There's a couple of things, like I said, like this is just a grab bag, but supposedly, and again, I couldn't get any photos of this, but supposedly Henry Cavill has shown up clean shaven to the Shazam set. And the rumor is still going around that Superman is going to make an appearance in Shazam. That's another film due out next year starring Zachary Levi. And that's very exciting as well to see if Superman will at least make an appearance. And it looks like it's possible. I think Cavill's agent let out a tweet or something that showed a picture of him in the studio. So that's very exciting. And what else? There really isn't a whole lot of news, as I said. But we still have this. We had those trailers I was mentioning on Twitter. That's another thing I was going to say. Was we get the trailers for Karate Kid's, sequel series, so to speak, Cobra Kai, where we got a trailer, like a commercial more than a trailer, I suppose, but of from Johnny's point of view and from Daniel's point of view, and it still looks like they're kind of doing that. Johnny is the hero, the protagonist, and Daniel is the bully type thing, which I don't really know why they're playing that up. Well, I know why. It's because that's like been an internet meme for a while now. But did that start on How I Met Your Mother? Is that why that's the big thing now? I don't know. I guess so. But the fact is the kind of these new promos are playing it a little more for comedy. Where Daniel is sort of like kind of his ego is kind of like real puffed up now, and he's like a car salesman, and he kind of is poking fun of Johnny because he's saying this is the guy kicked in the face or whatever, and Johnny on the other hand is sort of like a broke, sort of destitute guy, and he's beating up like some punks that are like beating up this kid only because they're gonna injure his car, they're gonna damage his car. So it looks like it's a little bit more kind of in that dark comedy vein that they were promising. So let's see if that works out. I don't know. I would like to see them play it straight. It looks to me like they are trying to make Daniel the antagonist, which, like I said, in the movies, he isn't you know, this completely angelic character. You know what I mean? He did do things to try to provoke not only Johnny but a lot of the other antagonists in the films. And he seems like he just wants to um, run Johnny out of town in this one. He doesn't want him to open the Cobra Kai out of ego. But anyhow, let's get to our final story of the night here. This is our big story of the night. But that was interesting. Check out those promos if you haven't seen them of Cobra Kai. I'm still looking forward to the show, and hopefully I'll see it. All right, Mark Hamill has returned yet again. Mark Hamill, since The Last Jedi, I don't know, did it just come out or is it going to come out? I don't know, because I'm not even interested anymore. Look at this picture we got up. This is the picture that pretty much, it's the way not only Mark Hamill seems to feel about the film, but the way most of us do. But a lot of interviews are taking place because, of course, The Last Jedi is coming out on DVD, Blu-ray, digital. I think it's already been out on digital, and so there's a lot of interviews, and we're still getting a lot of, some passive aggressive comments from Mark Hamill himself. Now, these, when I hear them, are just heartbreaking, but we have to, just for the sake of posterity, we have to record these things that Mark Hamill said to once again remind us just how bad Last Jedi was, the lacking Jedi. All right, now, Mark Hamill talks about improvising on The Last Jedi. He says, I initially didn't acknowledge 3PO. I walked right past him. I said, Ryan, look, after all those years of service, even though we haven't been in contact in recent years, 3PO was the closest to a sidekick I had. Harrison had Chewie, and I had R2 and 3PO. But Ryan's so accommodating and so collaborative, he said, oh, absolutely, you should go over there. We didn't really have time to script anything, just to acknowledge him, and that's what I did. So that just goes to show how out of touch not only Rian Johnson, but the entire process of scripting a Star Wars movie, and you didn't stop to think to add a scene of having Luke Skywalker go over to C-3PO, a character that had been connected to him since the first film he was in, the first film Luke Skywalker was in, and you don't stop to give any weight to that reunion. It reminds me of how they didn't want to in The Force Awakens, they didn't script anything for Chewbacca and Princess Leia after Han Solo died. It's like, it's so blatant that the people making these films don't have the slightest regard for the concept, for the characters, for the story. Anybody under the sun that has any kind of warm feelings for Star Wars could come up with a better scenario than was come up for in this sequel trilogy. Now, like a lot of people, I mean, I trusted Kathleen Kennedy to actually shepherd this thing and to give it some TLC. But, instead of that, it's become POS. I don't understand what went wrong here. George Lucas was originally supposed to have some kind of input. He didn't have any input. They shut him down. Kathleen Kennedy shut him down. Basically, she's the Brutus of this scenario. And she obviously doesn't have any clue as to what, even the most milquetoast Star Wars fan would expect from a sequel trilogy. And it's just baffling to me that out of the millions, possibly billions of Star Wars fans in this world, the people making these movies have no clue whatsoever as to what fans would want to see in one. It's baffling. It's quite baffling. It's baffling to me, and I think it was baffling to Mark Hamill as well, judging by these comments. Let's go to this next one. This next comment, Mark Hamill talked about Luke learning that Han Solo died in a deleted scene in The Last Jedi. Mark Hamill says, yes, of course, because it shows Luke was putting on a facade in front of Rey and even Chewie, that he was embittered and sort of a broken man. And I think the fact that he could let his emotions out when he was by himself would have made an impact on the audience because it allowed them to grieve the loss of Han Solo just the way Luke felt it. But it always happens in films. You say, oh, what about this scene where this happens or that happens? Because you want to give the fullest experience you can. And like you say, it was brief enough that they had time for me to milk that big alien, but to show me human emotion, nah, we don't have time for that. But again, it's not my call. So again, we have Mark Hamill again with subtle diss, but again, they just don't have a clue, do they? They don't have a clue. You're not going to show Hamill mourning Harrison Ford's character in a Star Wars film. These are two characters that were like brothers. These are two characters that were brothers. I mean, you know, how many times did Harrison Ford, I keep calling them by their actor names, but how many times did Han Solo go after Luke Skywalker to save his life? I mean, come on. That's two Yomi Jr. There's probably even more than that. Then we have Luke going back to save Han. Of course, he messes up the first time in Empire Strikes Back. He didn't get there in time, and Darth Vader and so forth, but then he saves him from Jabba the Hutt. It's criminal. Once again, it's just criminal that they didn't have the foresight to think, what impact would these characters have on one another? The death of Han Solo really isn't treated with any pathos or gravitas or anything that would have any kind of lasting emotion in the film, because why? They're focusing more on how can we get these ancillary characters that nobody really cares about more screen time. And the concept was there from George Lucas, and it's just the execution is what's terrible. And we're going to get to that now with our final segment here. Mark Hamill was asked about George Lucas' version of the script and the treatment he had, I should say, because I don't think it was a full script, but he had the overlying story laid down. And Mark Hamill said, I happen to know that George didn't kill Luke until the end of episode 9. That's an important thing. Sidebar here. That's an important thing because that's when you would expect Luke Skywalker to die, at the end of the whole thing, when you can pass on the torch, so to speak, to the next generation. So, I'll continue on. I happen to know that George didn't kill Luke until the end of episode 9 after he trained Leia, which is another thread that was never played upon in The Last Jedi. So again, the plan all along from Return of the Jedi was that at some point Luke Skywalker was going to train Princess Leia to be a Jedi, because that's what he said in Return of the Jedi. She was going to learn how to use the powers as well. And that is something that is conveniently missing in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, because they couldn't see these characters expand to, graduate to the level they were supposed to be, 30 years down the road. They're still sticking them in the places they were back during the original trilogy, back when they were in their 20s. I mean, it's baffling. I don't understand how they couldn't foresee. But again, they were trying to pander to an audience that just wanted to see the same old, and not think of the progression of the character. So instead, at the end of the day, when they had to show that Princess Leia had some kind of Force abilities, they had that much maligned Mary Poppins scene of Princess Leia saving herself from vacuum of space with the Force, and so on and so forth. Continuing on, Mark Hamill said, George had an overall arc. If he didn't have all the details, he had sort of an overall feel for where the sequel trilogy was going. This one's more like a relay race. You run and hand the torch off to the next guy, he picks it up and goes. So again, he's coming right out and saying, Mark Hamill saying, there was no plan. There was absolutely no plan involved with these sequel trilogy films, because there was no overall arc used. I mean, they didn't use George Lucas's treatment. And apparently, J.J. Abrams had a very vague treatment that he wrote that was supposed to encompass sort of where they were going. And it was treated like, well, each director can do his own thing, but there was sort of an idea where it was going. Apparently, that wasn't the case either, because Rian Johnson steps in and threw out pretty much most of the ideas of J.J. Abrams, because, again, Snoke, who was built up to be some kind of a huge presence in the galaxy, is basically eliminated as if he was Bob the Goon, you know what I mean? And, other concepts like Rey's parentage turned out to be nothing, kind of underwhelming. Whatever J.J. Abrams couldn't figure out with Luke, he passed off to Johnson, and Johnson didn't have the right stuff either for that. So again, just there's no overall thought, there's no overall plan. This is all just flying by the seat of their pants, and there is absolutely no excuse for it. That's not the way you make a story, a trilogy. You can't take 3 films and just fly by the seat of your pants on each one. We had basically no closure, so to speak. Not even closure, but we didn't have the closure on a lot of things that were raised in The Force Awakens. A lot of reasons why The Force Awakens got a pass is because you can have a weak opening act and then sort of redeem it if you build on it correctly in the second installment. I can't think of too many places where that really has happened. I mean, one can argue, of course, Star Trek, but Star Trek 2 was basically a soft reboot. They got rid of the look, the feel, the story is never mentioned again. That's a little bit different. It's a soft reboot. But you can basically build on the foundation of The Force Awakens and still have a pretty decent film and a pretty decent trilogy if you could execute the second act properly. That didn't happen here. It raised more questions and caused more problems and was a disappointment pretty much all around. But again, rather than going on and on about it, I guess I don't know how many times we can belabor this subject and how they pretty much failed. Star Wars fans all over. I mean, I don't really know. Obviously, they have some loyalists that are going to love the film, and of course, that's your right. If you love the film, then more power to you. A lot of people didn't like the prequels, and like I said, I'm a diehard prequel fan, and for the most part, I enjoyed them. For the sake of the sequel trilogy, I wanted to be just as open-minded about it, but you could tell at least Lucas had a plan for the prequels. There is no plan. There was no plan. Rian Johnson was not the person to make this film. J.J. Abrams really wasn't the person to make the film Force Awakens, either the first act, but you can understand at least taking Abrams in the first act because he sets a handsome table, as I've always said. That's his forte. He's a fanboy. He sets the table and says, this will be fun. We got all these characters to play with. Then you send him away and you do the real story. And Rian Johnson was obviously not the guy to do that real story. And unfortunately, because Abrams didn't have the capacity of thought to put Luke, Leia, and Han in the first film together, we had to have somebody that could scramble and pick up the pieces because Han Solo, obviously Harrison Ford was not going to come back. He only came in for the one movie, and that was basically all he wanted to do. And so the scrambling to try to clean up that mess could have been handled well if in the right hands. And Rian Johnson, of course, wasn't those hands. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I said on Twitter, sort of jokingly, that I don't know, I should put up a poll over who would you rather give a swift kick in the pants to for ruining a beloved franchise, Rian Johnson or Zack Snyder. Probably I would say Rian Johnson because, I mean, Superman can be rebooted until the cows come home. You're never going to see Mark Hamill play Luke Skywalker again. One more thing in this interview that I've got here, he was asked whether he will play a Force Ghost in Episode 9. He still does not know at this point, which I think that's the reason why he kind of backed down on a lot of his criticisms because he might still have to work with these people. And he's pretty much voiced his displeasure. I don't know. Kathleen Kennedy, of course, like I said, the buck stops with her. And until she's removed from office, probably going to have subpar Star Wars films. Put somebody in charge that's actually a fan. We need a Kevin Feige in the driver's seat for the Star Wars franchise. It's as simple as that. All right, so there we go. Let me know what you think about Mark Hamill's comments. Let me know what you think about The Last Jedi. We've gone over this several times at this point, but I honestly don't know that they can salvage the sequel trilogy now at this point. I don't know that anybody, beyond the diehard loyalists, I don't know anybody that really cares about what's going to happen to Rey and Kylo Ren. Poe and Finn. I mean, they were kind of fun in the first movie, but we've got Rey already defeating Kylo Ren ostensibly twice now, right? She defeated him physically in the first movie. She defeated him mentally in the second movie. What is there left for her to defeat in the third movie? They doubled down on Kylo Ren staying evil. He killed Han Solo. There was not really anywhere for him to go after that. They killed off the main characters. They were putting all their chips on giving Princess Leia a large role in the, ninth entry, but unfortunately Carrie Fisher passed on. So there really isn't nowhere for them to go now for this ninth film. I have no idea and have arguably no interest because I had negligible interest in the second film in the Last Jedi because there was nothing other than, well, how is Luke going to train Rey? And when they pretty much took that away from us, then there was a redeeming aspect of that film really at all. All right, so thank you for joining us yet again for Johnny Torch Live number 65 and Torch News Roundup number 84. I'm trying to come up with a couple of topics that we're going to hit eventually in my ranking videos because those are always fun. Let's see, we're going to do my top 20 superhero films of all time. We're going to do the MCU re-ranked once the Infinity War comes out. I'm going to try to do that. Disappointed that I haven't gotten one view on the Batman ranking video. I got a couple of views on the Spider-Man ranking video, but at least, check out that Batman ranking video. It's hard to believe a Batman video is not getting at least one view. But again, such is life for me here on YouTube. Let's see. And also, I would like to do a, I don't know how many, top 10, top 20 favorite moments in superhero films. I don't know if I should do it just in superhero films or just films in general, so that might be open to interpretation and whatever I decide. Okay, so thank you once again for joining me. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you smash that subscribe button if you haven't. Make sure you share this video on every platform possible. And check out my link in the description below. I haven't put up a Twitter question yet for this week. But check out my Twitter page, and you'll usually see a poll of the week question there, and you'll find other fascinating things that you'll find nowhere else. And, of course, the link for my website. And check out my comic, The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, Private Eye. You'll be able to find on my website a myriad of things to amuse and entertain you. You've got the Bullets Bourbon store, where you can find t-shirts and hats and mugs and pretty much everything you need for your enjoyment of the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon. We also have my link to my I can't remember the name, Indie Comics, or Indie Planet, that's what I was trying to remember, Indie Planet, where you can buy my comic, The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, Private Eye. The link to Indie Planet is there on my website. You can also get it, the hard copy, but you can get it on digital demand. The most recent three issues for 99 cents. So check that out. Very inexpensive, and you'll be able to get yourself acclimated to the world of Bullets Bourbon, Private Eye. You can also find out about my next upcoming appearance. I'm going to be at KidsCon in Nashua, New Hampshire on June 10th at the Radisson Hotel. You can check all that information out right there. You can get directions. We also have a free preview up if you want to get a look at a couple of pages from our most recent issue, Street of Dreams. We're still working on issue 5, which should be coming out, God willing, sometime this year. And also, I don't toot my horn about this too often, but you got to check out the Jedi Johnnie work from home page, because there is a lot of ways that you can make some money on the side that a lot of people don't really take advantage of. You're not going to get rich. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but you can make a couple of bucks every month, maybe every 2 months. That comes in handy. Who doesn't need 20, 25 bucks a month? All right, so once again, this is your host, Johnny Torch. Remind you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.